Hello everyone, this is Allegedly Caleb, and we are back with some more Panzer campaigns, Poland 39, where we are playing the Polish trying to ward off the German attack. It is currently me and my partner Gunner. We are in the Wargaming Discord. Here they are, TWC, the Wargaming Club. We are facing off against our opponents, James. That's his YouTube channel name, also known as Caveat. He is playing the Germans alongside Andrea, who is also playing the Germans. Now, all of these people are from that Discord I mentioned. If you want a link to it, let me know and I can provide one. Otherwise, let's get into the action. So I am centered on Warsaw, the Polish capital. There's no action happening near here right now, thankfully. We're currently on our third turn of the game. Let's start from north to south. First, I do want to describe my area of control. So let me get my epic pen. Here we are. All right. So, roughly, I am in control of roughly like that. So the main action is happening up here and along here. For me. Up north, he's trying to encircle my army up there. I'll pull up everyone's name for you too. So here's my OOB. I'm in charge of Army Pomorze, which is the army up here holding the Polish corridor. Army Poznan, which is the army controlling the major city of Poznan right here. And Army Prusy, which currently is a pretty much reserve force. In addition, I also have Army Modlin, which controls a lot of the forces up north. And then I've got a couple of the different corps holding along the river on this side. The reason I have so many is because all of these aren't quite as large as the forces that my partner Gunner is controlling. So he's controlling, you can see Army Krakow, very large. I think the largest one we have. Army Lotz, also very large. Both of these are going to be in the center of the action pretty much the whole game. And then Army Prusy, I made a mistake. That is not an army that either of us control right now. It's pretty much our reserve army. So we'll be assigning units from it to other groups as we go along and as they're needed. So that's a quick overview of the armies. Let me get rid of all that. And let's take a look at the action. So here's up north in Gdynia. We've got our famous stand of our Westerplatte garrison. They are still standing strong. They're at 89%. They're isolated and they're low on ammo, but what can you do? They are up against some pretty decent units from Group Eberhardt. So these are SS. We've also got Gdynia. I'm going to be trying to hold on to this for the whole game. We've got our border that we're creating. This is an objective that I only need to hold for this long. I might pull back if it's difficult to hold, but it seems like it'll be okay for now. Most of their units up here are these types of basically border guards, so they're not going to stand very well against our elite guys. You can see these are morale level B. Those are very good troops. Got a bunch of our border guards. All of these types of units, this color right here, are our border guard units. Mostly they're 30 men each, unless I've combined them. So you can see this one, I've combined 2 units into that. We've also got our Hell Peninsula. So we're going to have a big, strong force holding up here. Anyway, that is up here. So they're starting to poke around a little bit, but I've disrupted some of their units along here. I'm bombarding them whenever they get close. Now they're pretty much in control of Danzig, but I never really had many men up there in the first place. Cartuzzi, we're controlling for now. We just need to hold on to that for 28 turns. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but we're going to try over here. I did pull out a lot of units over here, though, because I want to strengthen this area as much as I can. Now, as we continue south, you can see some more of their units bullying my border guards, basically. Got another little area we're going to try to hold over here. Oh, interesting. I never removed that unit. Gonna have to go back and do that later. But anyway, you can see they've got a lot of forces coming in, but not nearly as much as in other areas of the battlefield. Now we're going to start seeing some of my troops. So these guys, this is an infantry division. Historically, they were cut off in the Polish corridor and mostly destroyed. Same thing with this division, I believe. The 9th Infantry Division. This one, oh, excuse me. This is the 27th Infantry Division. So our goal with these guys is to bring them south to our main defensive line, which is this city right here. So this is right along the river that we want to defend along at the beginning. And I'll be going through my battle plan. But I did not want to skip out because this is one of the areas I personally am seeing the most action. So we've got this little battle group over here holding Chojnice. This area is essentially full of regional troops. So most of these guys probably are from around here. And they are up against some scary enemy units. They have a Panzer division in the area. They've got all these motorized troops. Got some 88s over here I was targeting, but we're putting up an okay fight. We've disrupted some of their units. We disrupted a lot of their units, actually. We just have a mix of just normal Polish units. Now, they beat us out of some trenches up here. You can see this guy's at almost 50%. This guy's still disrupted. He's below 50%. So we're trying to hold up around this city. If we can hold this, then we'll get some points, which every point we can get will matter in this scenario. So we also have this little pink brigade. This is a cavalry brigade. Essentially, what I'm doing is these guys are just stalling for time. These guys, who the Germans cannot see, are going to be they're going to be trying to screen this division as they retreat behind the river. Now, in this game, rivers are very difficult to cross if your opponent is holding it, especially if he starts blowing the bridges. It can take many turns to get across. So I'm trying to use the rivers as a backbone for my defensive line. They're also fairly easy to defend. Now, one thing Napoleon said to his son is when you're defending a river, it can be sort of a trap sometimes because you'll be tempted to spread your force along the whole river, and then the enemy will, of course, attack one centralized point. And what will end up happening is you'll have a battle where your forces are spread out all over the place and you have to consolidate them as quickly as you can, whereas the enemy can quickly strike through and break whatever area they're trying to cross from before you can reinforce it. So we're trying to prevent that. We want plenty of forces along the river in reserve, ready to reinforce wherever needed, and then light holding forces along the river ready to basically just show where the enemy is. So I assume that we'll have a couple turns to hold the area or counterattack before they can get a pontoon bridge down. So anyway, that's a little bit of my plan. You can see I've got a couple units that have been isolated. To isolate a unit in this game, all you need to do is stick a guy on either side of it. So one right here and one right here would work to isolate this unit. A little annoying. My opponent is doing a really good job at getting those units where he can, but a lot of the units that he has isolated are units that were stuck there. So I couldn't move them. If I could, then I would have. But some of these units started out fixed. So you can see I have a little cavalry company, a little bicycle company. That might be a bicycle, maybe a little more than a company. And then another little infantry company. So this guy's got 9 men in it. That's like one squad, basically. That's basically a platoon. We've got an armored train. So, like I said, we're trying to pull these guys across this river and then eventually bring them on down to here where my defensive line is set up. You can see I've got bunkers and trenches holding along here, but I'm not planning on staying here. Pretty much once all my units are evacuated, I'm going to withdraw to this much tighter defensive line. And as you might know, tight defensive lines are a lot easier to hold than big old long ones. So we're going to also try to blow the bridges along this river to make it more difficult for him to get across. Now eventually, we would like to hold one long river line and canal line. So we'll hold this area. You can see this little thing. This is a canal. Similar rules to a river, difficult to cross. And from there, we're basically, follow my cursor. We're going to hold the river all along here. Around this city right there. That'll be one of our strong points. Then wrap around. All the way down. Got this whole marshy area. That'll be easy to hold. Then we get, that was along the Warta River. Now we're on the Nur. And then you can see all the way down until we get to Lotz. This is where Gunner will take his units. So I'll show more of my forces in a second. I'm going to show the other part of my forces along East Prussia. So this division right here, my 16th Infantry Division, we're trying to hold a line, actually with two divisions. Two divisions and a brigade. We're trying to hold a line pretty much like this. To keep him from crossing the river and cutting off my forces trying to retreat. You can see he could go across this way, cut my guys off. He could go down this way, cut my guys off. He could even go down here, get really into my back lines. And if we're not careful, if we're really not careful, he can force a river crossing all the way down here at Tow Run. So we want to avoid that. And that is why my secondary defensive line, not secondary, but you saw one half of my defensive line. The second half is going to be really easy to follow. It's literally just going to be the Vistula. So you'll see it'll run all the way along here. Down to Warsaw. And once we hit pretty much Modlin, it's going to connect and switch over to the Naru. And you can see my forces are kind of predispositioned along this front already. And his forces are a lot weaker on this side than they are on this side. So this side is the one we're going to have to worry about. I don't think he'll be breaking through on this side. On this side, it's mostly just border guard troops. So you can see that defensive line will kind of go, it gets a little more sparse, but by the time you're up here, this is another area a lot of fighting started happening. We've got the upper hand up here. We've got a cavalry brigade, got some of our little armored cars there, and a bunch of our border guards, and this little, pretty much like a little fighting group. They're, I don't know what you'd call them, almost like a conf group, but for the Poles. So that's my defensive line. Now, up here we've got more fighting. He might try to push across this little river right here. You can see the terrain. We've got a bunker, and he has to cross a bridge. So he's going to have a tough time doing that. But once these engineers get here, it'll be a lot easier. Actually, he'd be able to ferry units into this hex. So I was trying to disrupt that with my artillery, but it didn't quite work out. And I needed to find ways, because mostly this defensive line started this way. I need to find ways to consolidate it, because as you can see, all of my battalions are split into their 3 companies, which is not good. We do not want our battalions to be split, because what the enemy will do is he'll attack us with his full battalions, and he'll end up having a 3-to-1 man advantage in the areas he attacks us at the bare minimum. He could end up having a 9-to-1 man advantage if he stacks all 3 of his battalions in a regiment into one attack against just one of my companies. And that would be awful, and that's exactly what we want to avoid. So you can see there are some tanks roaming around up here too. There's some the Panzer T-38, or not T, what was it? Not the Czech ones. It was those Czech ones that they took from the Czech Republic. I can't remember what they're called. Panzer 38Ts. I think that's what it was. Some of those are roaming around here. And then you've got some more units along here. Now this line is a lot weaker, and it's a lot more spread out. So I'm going to try to consolidate that, but we do have a lot of units in reserve. I'm pushing these guys up to hold in reserve for this line, which they seem to be pressuring a lot more. And these guys I'm going to keep kind of right around here. This red unit, this is a cavalry brigade. I'm pretty much just going to hold along this. They're just going to hold the flank. And again, once all of the units in the Polish corridor are able to cross the Vistula and get into our main line, our main battle line, that's when we're going to start withdrawing with these units. Try to use our rail to our advantage, because the Axis do not have access to rail in this game. So we want to use that to our advantage, because that's one of the few advantages the Poles do have in this game. And personally, I do actually really like these cavalry brigades. They are very maneuverable, and you can hit and run the enemy pretty well. And on this map where you got fields, you can see the vision is very poor. So if you're in a field, you can only see one hex out. You can see it in the clear, you can see a lot further. But in these fields, it's pretty bad vision. Like right here, you got all fields. So that makes those cavalry brigades, that makes those very good for attacking and skirmishing and hitting and running. Over by Malawa. Unfortunately, we're going against history here. We in the actual first couple days of the invasion of Poland, the Poles actually pulled off a pretty nice defense here. They destroyed a lot of enemy tanks, and this was a lot of SS troops on top of that. So, we are not going to be defending this. We're going to be getting these guys out of dodge. They are withdrawing down to our defensive line along the river, trying to take advantage of that rail like I was saying earlier. I would have held this area. The main problem is our flanks. This flank was very wide open, and they have a whole pretty much a Panzer regiment, I think, over here attached to the SS unit. And what they probably would have done is just gone around the flank. It might have taken a little bit because you can see there's marsh, but you can see there are avenues, and the Poles are not amazing when they are fighting tanks. They just don't have enough AT guns. So rather than just keep these guys here for not really any strategic reason, I mean, these victory points, it's only 100. That's not very much. I'll show you how much the enemy has to get to win in a little bit. But overall, these guys, once the enemy gets around them, you can see there's so much open space behind them. And I was so afraid that the enemy was going to push around us and push to the bridges and capture the bridges before we could do anything. So that's why we're pulling back. We're choosing our battles. Now I will show you the victory points. So remember, Malwa itself was just 100 victory points. The Germans need to get 30,000 to win the game. Now overall, they can almost get there if they capture almost like every single victory point in the game. So a big amount of what they need to do are capture our troops and destroy our troops. That will get them a lot of their victory points. If they don't do that and they just capture our points, but we are able to strategically withdraw, they're going to have a very difficult time. So we got to put casualties on them where we can. And this might look alarming, but these casualties right here, that is primarily our border guard troops, all the ones along here. And we can't really do too much and with those guys, considering it's 30 men against like 600 in most of those little engagements. I personally have just been withdrawing them as far as they can, or a little bit further, and using him to just ambush his troops as he advances. My teammate Gunner has been using them a little more aggressively, and because of that, his border guard units are starting to get wiped out. But he does have the more active front, so I'll show that off in a little bit. We're almost done with our overview. So I showed these guys are, at first they were protecting this flank while these units got ready to rail out of here, but the last batch of them are pretty much ready. Everyone else that's here, I'm okay with sacrificing. It's going to suck to lose these AT guns. That's going to really suck. We might even see if we can get them out of here in time. Probably next turn, but he's got some tanks here that we actually took out a couple. So he's currently down 5 vehicles, not very many, but this is considering it's, what time is it in the game? It's 9 a.m. Technically it's the end of 9. It's like 11 a.m. now. But he's down 5 tanks in a couple hours. I'm sure he'll start to lose more as the day draws on. Down 42 guns. You can see we aren't losing many vehicles or guns, which is nice. So he's also lost 2 planes. And he's captured 350 points worth of victory objectives. Now these guys, they're slowly withdrawing. Eventually they're going to withdraw down here and hopefully rail out. Now this unit is along the river. Nothing's really happening there. This green unit, that's Cavalry Brigade. They're withdrawing across the river. This is a little strong point on the river. This is another little strong point. We got some crossroads over here and a canal. And up here, I showed this a little bit. Just dueling with their border guards pretty much. Now everything else back here is pretty much empty. You can see there's a lot of units, but again, not much happening. So, because of that, we're pretty much ignoring this front. In the other campaign games, you actually do get the Soviets after 2 weeks in the game. So, we won't be having to deal with them, luckily, because we played the half campaign game. And I'm happy about that. I did not want to have to deal with that in our flank, too. That would have been awful. But let's take a look at my other units. So again, this is that defensive line. You can see a lot of our units are concentrating around there. Got these pink guys right here. They are moving in to start holding this river line. So all of these units are withdrawing. Poznan is even withdrawing. We've got a couple units we're going to keep here. All these ON battalions, which are basically like militia local soldiers, they're going to stay in Poznan to hold it. Because if we can hold it for 38 turns, we'll get 300 points, which is not bad. And I think he might just commit some border guards to it, because he might assume I'll have withdrawn from here. So we're going to withdraw with most of our units in this division, but not all of them. And everyone else along here is withdrawing past that river line that I mentioned. Got a little bit of a fight over here. We were able to withdraw most of our troops out of this area. You can see they're all on their little trains. We're concentrating around here, and once Gunner is ready, and this is where our forces are divided. These green guys are his. This is my remaining unit that's on his border. So, with that said, we have to make sure we coordinate when he pulls back. Because when he pulls back is when I'm going to pull back. Because currently I'm on his flank. If I just pull all these guys back to where this is, all of his entire line is basically going to be outflanked. Or it could be. So that's why I'm not pulling them all the way back yet. Anyway, let's take a look at some more of his units and his men. So he's got some tanks isolated right here. Oh, anyway, most of the soldiers that I am facing are controlled by Andrea. So Andrea is the Army Group North commander, and James, or Caveat, is the Army Group South commander, and that is who Gunner is facing. So James got some of his light tanks isolated, which is not good for him. I wish we had some AT guns nearby to help take those guys with. And Gunner is a very experienced player. He knows what he is doing, so I am very happy to have him as a partner in this. We got some more. Look at this. These border guard units are not doing too hot. See, this is what they like to do, to sit on either side of one of our units. But as long as these units hold, we won't have to worry about those guys doing anything while they're sitting there trying to finish off some of our 20 men or however many. Ooh, that doesn't look good. We isolated those guys, but then in turn he isolated one of our companies. And he's about to break through here. So I suppose we've got this unit. Now, these guys could probably withdraw. Maybe. This is a division. Okay. Mokra, that's another area that the Poles historically did pretty well in. This is a fortress town for the Poles. You can see it is a very well defended and a very urban area. So these urban areas are where we're really hoping to chew up his units. Or not just his units, but both of our opponent's units. With Fog of War also, he doesn't know how many men we have. So you can see these 3 X's. That just means there's at least 999 men here, or at the minimum 100. If it drops down to an amount that has 2 numbers, then it'll be 2 X's and so on. So he doesn't know, as long as we're in concealment terrain, which is everything except for open terrain basically, he doesn't know that these are broken down units, which is good. Because I know James is a little bit more on the cautious side when it comes to attacking. And I advised Gunner of that because James and I have played each other. And I wanted my teammate to have as much of an advantage as he can. So you can see we've got some more of a battle going on over here. Now this is where it really starts to heat up. This is a good move. If he can get down this road right here. Just get behind everyone. Got a bunch of pillboxes all along here. Sometimes they have some irregulars spawning in some of these spots. So it's kind of difficult to defend these and to retake them. But you can see those guys there too. Yeah, this whole area is going to be able to be defended for a while, I think. As long as it doesn't get all cut off like it was historically. These guys are mountain troops. They got little feathers in their hats. Those are pretty elite troops. Now what happened here historically is the Germans were able to, you can see they have armor and stuff over here. They were able to just bypass this whole area and go Whoop. And suddenly, that whole area is bypassed and eventually surrounded and isolated. So I warned my teammate that they might try to recreate that historical movement. All right, now we've got the Slovaks up in these mountains because they were actually part of this invasion. But our opponent's going to have a little bit more difficulty up in these mountains with all the height advantages and difficult terrain and all that. Now here's Krakow, one of our strong points. You got the 10th Motorized Brigade. This is one of our best units. They're a combined arms unit of tanks, motorized infantry, anti-tank guns, all of that good stuff. So they're hanging out over here for now. I don't know where we're going to commit those, but I am transferring my tanks because I started out. The Poles had a couple of tank battalions, some imported tanks like French tanks and some British tanks, as well as some homemade tanks, which I know you might think, oh, those got to be garbage. No, not all of them were. These were little tankettes. Not tank. What the heck? These were little tankettes. These TKS tankettes. These were not very good. I mean, they fulfilled their recon function, but they weren't effective in combat very much. What was effective in combat, let's see if I can find some. Should be able to. I know there's some over here. If I can find them. Is this them? No, that's an armored train. There's a type of tank called the 7TP, which is the tank that the Poles created themselves. Here's some. So these were on equal footing to the early Panzer IIIs, which the Germans didn't have very many of. The problem with the Poles is they didn't have any dedicated like armored units larger than a battalion, whereas the Germans concentrated all their armor. So even though the Germans did not have much more armor than Panzer Is and Panzer IIs, with Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs sprinkled, lightly sprinkled in there in the invasion of Poland, because they concentrated what they did have, they were able to have a big advantage over the Poles, which the Poles actually had a somewhat comparable amount of armored vehicles, although most of those armored vehicles were considered obsolete. So, little fun fact, give the Poles a couple more years and that might have changed. Their military was in the middle of some pretty big changes. So that is everything. I hope you enjoyed. This is going to be a very crazy and difficult campaign, but I am very much looking forward to it, and I hope you are too. I will be back with another update once I have one for you, probably in another 3 or so turns. But anyway, everyone, I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope you are as excited for the next one as I am. Anyway, this is Allegedly Caleb, signing off.